Another tragedy at sea as fire kills 2 off Western Australia. A pregnant passenger airlifted from a cruise liner off Sydney. And a South Australian cricketer makes history. Good evening. Also tonight, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. We'll show you how Australians remembered. But first, 2 sailors are dead after the second fatal accident off the Australian coast in as many days. The men were battling a fire in the engine room of a Greek freighter 90 nautical miles off Port Hedland in Western Australia. It took the crew nearly 6 hours to extinguish the blaze.
150,000-tonne dead weight, the Maltese-registered Maxell is now drifting aimlessly off the West Australian coast. The ship's master called Mayday late last night after fire broke out in the engine room.
And at one stage, we lost contact with them for an hour or 2 because they had to actually leave the bridge where all their communications are because of the amount of smoke.
Hours after the crew managed to extinguish the blaze, it was confirmed 2 men died fighting the flames.
This would have been super hot. It would have been like a furnace.
And still no answers about yesterday's death of 2 Townsville men on a pontoon on the Great Barrier Reef. The 2 from Pure Pleasure Cruises were inspecting the underside of the platform when they were overcome by toxic fumes. 3 shipmates then went to their aid with oxygen tanks, but were also overcome. 1 remains in a serious condition.
We would acknowledge the courage, determination and professionalism of our crew.
64 tourists who were diving and swimming while the tragedy occurred were stranded for hours. Many were obviously shaken, most carrying information about the counselling service Lifeline.
Oh, I feel all right. Shock, but there's people die.
After 24 hours, the type and source of the poison gas is still unknown. The cruise company calling the deaths a tragic accident. Belinda Cole, National 9 News.
And there was more drama at sea last night, this time off Sydney. A pregnant woman suffered a life-threatening illness on the maiden voyage of Australia's newest and biggest cruise ship. A rescue helicopter had to make a mercy dash to the vessel more than 30 kilometres off the coast.
Labelled the jumbo jet of Australian cruising, the Pacific Sky set out on a maiden 2-day North Coast voyage from Sydney last night. The emergency unfolded at 3 this morning.
This being a seriously life-threatening illness, the ship's doctor wanted the patient removed as quickly as possible from the ship.
The 38-year-old passenger was in the early stages of pregnancy. With 1,500 other passengers on board, the ship turned back to Sydney, but with every second counting, the Westpac Lifesaver helicopter was called out. It rendezvoused with the liner about 35 kilometres offshore. A doctor and a paramedic were winched down. 10 minutes later, the patient was winched up.
She was obviously very apprehensive. It's not something that people usually get exposed to, being winched off the back of a ship that they've gone on to have an enjoyable cruise.
Thankfully, it was light, the seas calm.
The crew are well versed in this. It was a time in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Most of the passengers were still asleep, so they weren't aware.
In 20 minutes, the woman was at St George Hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery. The complication ended her pregnancy. There was only enough room on the helicopter for the patient. Her husband was forced to stay behind on the ship. It comes back into Sydney tomorrow morning. The woman is now in a serious but stable condition. Matthew Watson, National 9 News.
To the latest on the US election, and the sniping continues as the country tries to find a new president. The Bush camp remains confident, with the official recount of votes in Florida showing him about 1,600 votes clear of Al Gore.
As he headed off to jog today, George Bush was upbeat, obviously buoyed by the latest figures.
This is certainly unprecedented in modern times. The more quickly this gets resolved, the better off it is for the nation.
Wearing a Band-Aid over an infection, he was certainly talking like a winner.
But I'm in the process of planning in a responsible way a potential administration.
While Bush's tone here today was conciliatory, his representatives in Florida turned up the heat on Al Gore. They're angry the Gore campaign demanded a meticulous hand count of votes in some areas of Florida starting tomorrow.
We will therefore vigorously oppose the Gore campaign's efforts to keep recounting over and over until it happens to like the result.
There were even threats of retaliation.
What if we insisted on recounts in other states that today are very, very close?
The Vice President tried to appear relaxed by playing football with his family.
I think we're going to win this game.
But by backing the legal action mounted by Florida voters who claim they were confused by this now infamous West Palm Beach ballot, Gore is being accused of prolonging the crisis. His staff deny that.
What we are seeing here is a democracy in action, a careful and lawful effort to ensure that the will of the people is done.
It'll be another week before the counting of absentee votes arriving from Florida residents overseas. It's so close, they could determine the next occupant of the White House, where last night the current and 3 previous occupants had dinner.
Back home, and doctors have reattached a teenager's hand after it was almost severed during a violent attack at a Hove playground. Not long after, the same gang is believed to have bashed and robbed a second youth nearby. He was left with head injuries.
The first attack happened at 10:40 last night in a park on the Esplanade. The 16-year-old Glenelg North youth approached by a gang who demanded his phone and money. The ferocity of the assault has concerned police.
He was first of all attacked with an iron bar, and later he was attacked with a machete which almost severed his wrist.
Doctors operated last night to reattach the hand, the victim now in a stable condition. A short time later, the gang struck again. A 15-year-old boy bashed with a pole near here at Townsend House. That attack saw him rush to hospital with head injuries.
People coming to these places and just randomly attacking innocent people who are having a get-together in the park is obviously a serious matter.
The second teen was also robbed of his phone. Late today, detectives raided a northern suburbs home after a vehicle was seen leaving the scene of last night's attack. After interviewing the driver, they've discounted it as being involved. Anyone with information should contact Crime Stoppers. Adam Thomson, National 9 News.
Well, today is Remembrance Day, the day we commemorate the end of the First World War. And across the nation, Australians have paid tribute to those who died for us. And here in Adelaide, hundreds attended a special ceremony at the State War Memorial on North Terrace.
More than 100,000 Australians have died fighting for our freedom. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we remember them.
Lest we forget.
Remembrance Day marks the anniversary of the signing of the armistice to end the First World War in 1918. For many, it's an opportunity to say thank you. For others, to pay tribute to old mates.
It brings home to me the sacrifice that these guys made.
Today is the first Remembrance Day of a new millennium. The tributes laid here prove that while centuries will pass, the legacy and memory of those who fell will not. At Centennial Park, 95-year-old Thelma Tregowath, the widow of a World War I veteran, planted a rosemary bush, a descendant of those that grow at Anzac Cove. And it was a special Remembrance Day in Port Lincoln, the town's new war memorial, the site of its commemorations. Interstate, the Governor-General laid a wreath at the National War Memorial in Canberra, while Prime Minister Howard joined thousands in Sydney to pay his respects to those who made the ultimate sacrifice. In East Timor, Australian United Nations peacekeepers paraded through Ballabo before observing a minute's silence to remember fallen comrades. Ross Stargatt, National 9 News.
Cricket history was created at Port Adelaide today. Karen Rolton has become the first woman to play in a men's grade cricket match in South Australia. And she's making quite a debut. A short time ago, Rolton was 67 not out.
A batting average of 279 and a string of impressive bowling performances saw Karen Rolton dominate the women's cricket competition last season. It was suggested she switched from Port Adelaide's women's team to the men's, and today that switch became a reality.
That I just want to be treated as another cricketer, not a female playing like in the men's competition, just another cricketer, and go out and show what I can do.
Up against Northern Districts at C-grade level, Rolton's history-making walk to the crease came at the fall of the third wicket. The vice-captain of our national women's team made a nervous start before settling into her rhythm. Despite Rolton's imposing record, a handful of people objected to her making the move.
Oh, look, there are obviously some passing comments, but overall, I think the thoughts of people have been positive.
Rolton's main motivation is to improve her game and, with a bit of luck, challenge for the mantle as the best batswoman in the world at the upcoming World Cup in New Zealand.
Rolton's also hoping the publicity she's generated will help lift the profile of women's cricket.
I think there's still probably some people out there that don't realise that girls or women play cricket, so hopefully a bit more publicity and girls might see it and say, hey, this is something I want to do.
Hamish Arthur, National 9 News.
A Sydney bookseller has apologised to Don Bradman for trying to sell his personal letters. We'll have that story for you after the break. And there's more misery in England as flood victims wade through what's left. This is National 9 News. Hundreds have attended the funeral of shark victim Ken Crew, who died last Monday after being attacked by a white pointer off Perth's Cottesloe Beach. Mr Crew's wife, 3 children and friend Dick Avery, who was injured trying to rescue the 49-year-old, were among the mourners. Many watched the service on a giant screen in a nearby hall. Perth beaches remain closed as Department of Fisheries staff continue to hunt the shark. Back overseas now, and there's been another escalation of fighting on the West Bank, with 5 Palestinians and an Israeli soldier killed today. More than 200 people have now died in the violence over the past 6 weeks, and immediate hopes of resuming peace talks now seem doomed, as Israeli leaders vow to continue their tough stance.
Stoked by the fury of revenge, Palestinians called it a day of rage. And like the ones before it, the street clashes and gun battles ended in more bloodshed. Today's violence followed the funeral of a militia commander hit yesterday in an Israeli missile attack on the West Bank. To the Palestinians, Hussein Abayat has become yet another martyr in their struggle for independence. To Israel, he was a terrorist. In Washington, Yasser Arafat's hopes for a new diplomatic solution crumbled with each meeting. At a news conference, the frustration began to show.
You want me to treat our people as animals?
No, not at all.
I can't permit for you to speak with me in this language.
Israel's Prime Minister will make the same journey tomorrow, holding talks with President Bill Clinton. But Ehud Barak has already played down expectations of a breakthrough, declaring the situation remains too volatile to talk peace. Damian Ryan, National 9 News.
Britain is bracing itself for another weekend of torrential rain. But in Yorkshire, 140 homes are slowly re-emerging after a week underwater.
Evacuated residents are coming back only to save irreplaceable possessions like family photographs. While many expected the worst, it's not the same as seeing it. With more heavy rain forecast, the situation in areas already flooded is expected to worsen. In dramatic scenes, Spanish police have arrested 5 members of the Basque separatist group ETA. Heavily armed balaclava-clad officers raided 5 city apartments in the north of the country, bundling suspected members of the group into waiting cars. ETA has been blamed for around 800 killings in its 32-year fight for an independent state. In Argentina, 200 angry unemployed workers have set fire to a police station, taken 5 officers hostage and looted shops. Police responded with rubber bullets and tear gas. 1 man was killed during the rampage, which erupted after police broke up a 10-day-old highway blockade in protest over the country's 2-year economic slump. Chris Hawkins, National 9 News.
A Sydney bookseller has decided not to sell off personal letters written by Sir Donald Bradman after the cricketing legend called him greedy and the sale a breach of trust. The letters, which tell of Sir Don's grief over the death of his wife, were expected to fetch about $20,000.
I never meant to cause Sir Donald any offence at all, so they have been withdrawn from the market.
Mr Feehan has also apologised for causing any pain or grief. What do you make of that, Ken?
Well, it could have been disgraceful, Georgie, really, but I think common sense in the end has prevailed, which is good news for you. Great man, Sir Donald Bradman, that's for sure. Hi, everyone. After the break, the West Indies hit back in the tour match in Perth, a fiery win for Adelaide City Force, and on the final day of the Carnival at Flemington, some past greats struck their stuff. Glamour 4-year-old Testarossa has finished the spring racing carnival on a high winning the Group 1 Emmett Stakes at Flemington today. The win took the champions' earnings to almost $3 million.
After this week's party atmosphere, families invaded Flemington for the wind-down phase of the Cup Carnival, with much of the focus on the gathering of some of racing's legendary jockeys, including the man widely regarded as the best ever, Lester Piggott. For Bob Skelton, it was a chance to rekindle memories of his Melbourne Cup winning ride aboard Vanderham 24 years ago.
The man who won the 76 Melbourne Cup, Bob Skelton, wins the Legends race by 3 lengths.
The Emirates Stakes was an opportunity for Testarossa to turn around a disappointing Cox Plate effort. Patrick Payne replaced regular rider Brett Preble, but the top weight didn't figure early.
And Matter of Honour's in front, Adam outside of it second, then Camarina third, Umrum running fourth.
After setting off the pace, Payne brought it home in the straight.
Testarossa wide out, goes up to hit the lead from Weaselville, but it's the top weight Testarossa, what a run! Testarossa wins it from Weaselville.
The champions' connections couldn't believe it.
Absolutely sensational, and he's star.
With this horse, you can do things you can't do with other horses. He'll just work with you and he'll just do what you want him to do. And even if you might get things wrong here and there, he'll compensate for that. So that's why he just keeps winning.
Testarossa returned $14 for the win, beating Weasel Will and Crawl. Last year, Preble's 9 winners for the carnival broke a 52-year-old record. In the Queen Elizabeth Stakes, he equalled that figure again.
Savrocker a half a length in front of Ultra Smug, and Preble's done it again. 9 winners, Brett Preble wins it a length.
Savrocker paid almost $8, finishing ahead of Ultra Smug and Mayshield.
The West Indies are fighting back in their 2 match against Western Australia at the Wacker in Perth. The Warriors were unable to destroy the visitors like they did in the first innings. The Windies today showing some fight.
Pretty good one there.
The West Indies resumed at 1 for 31. Sherwin Campbell left to anchor the top order. Night watchman Marlon Black survived the best way he knew. Matthew Nicholson hasn't let up with bat and ball. Another edge flashing to Damien Martin at chest level.
Edge and well held. It's a good piece of bowling.
Martin needed Tom Moody's height to snare the next chance. Giving nothing was Campbell, scoring just 1 run in the first hour. The slow progress and poor shot selection not helping the Windies at lunch. 3 for 95.
A poor shot and bang. Say goodnight.
That attitude changed after the break with Campbell and Chanderpaul hungry for runs. The hook shot popular, a slashing cut from Campbell finally found 50.
Cut away, 4 runs.
A half-hearted pull shot and Chanderpaul was out for 43. The tourists still battling a bouncy whacker pitch. And in Hobart, the outstanding Pura Cup form of Jamie Cox and Ricky Ponting didn't roll into their one-dayer against New South Wales. Cox run out for a duck, while Ponting edged one to Test teammate Mark Waugh.
It's gone. That's beautiful bowling.
Ponting then had Mark short of his crease.
Ricky Ponting is out.
But Steve Waugh helped guide his side to a win inside 38 overs. Michael Roberts, National 9 News.
And Bangladesh is making a fine fist of its first ever Test match. A short time ago, the home team was 8 for 359 in its first innings against India. Islam has been the hero, making a superb century. And BMW driver Paul Morris has taken pole position for both races in tomorrow's 5th round of the Australian Super Touring Championship at Malala. And there was also some joy for James Brock, the son of 9 times Bathurst winner Peter. He's qualified in the top 10 for the first time.
Despite getting some pointers from his legendary father about the performance of his car yesterday, Brock Jr. still encountered a few problems today during qualifying for the second of tomorrow's races. However, he still managed to record the 10th fastest time.
Finally, I think we're getting somewhere with this car. It's been a bit of a struggle from the start of this year, but I think we're starting to progress and hopefully it's a sign of things to come.
Brock will start from 12th on the grid in race 1. Series leader Morris set the pace in both sessions, earning 2 bonus championship points for his efforts.
Yeah, great to have 2 pole positions here at Malala today, and 9 for the season. You can't beat that. The team's done a great job.
And at Rally Australia, British driver Richard Burns in a Subaru holds a 29-second lead with 1 day to go. Hamish Arthur, National 9 News.
After losing its first 3 matches of the new season, Adelaide City has recorded its 2nd win in a row. The Force beat the Football Kings in Auckland last night 1-0. Gianluca Legati scored the goal. Playing in the white strip, Adelaide City came under fire from Tim Stevens in the 34th minute after Stevens was on the receiving end of a late challenge. It sparked a fierce melee with many players from both sides becoming involved. How bad's that? 0-0 at half-time, Legati broke the deadlock in the 74th minute. It was the perfect way to celebrate Carl Beat's 200 NSL game. Fantastic stuff for Adelaide City. And to golf, and Aaron Baddeley has made the Cuttney's first tournament as a professional. Baddeley made a birdie at the 18th to finish 2 over after the second round of a Masters tournament in Japan. But the Aussie has made a bad start to the third round, which began a short time ago. He was penalised 2 shots for taking an incorrect drop. But better news for Pat Rafter. He's through to the semi-finals of the Lyon Grand Prix tennis tournament in France. Rafter down Gustavo Kuerten in the quarters. His next opponent is Moroccan Hichem Arazi. And Georgie, that's our sport.
Thanks very much, KG.
Where the Billy Smiths gone with this world? Hichem Arazi and all sorts of funny names.
Challenges you every weekend.
It does.
After the break, we'll see what Xavier can conjure up on the weather front.
Good evening, folks. Well, it's been a fairly odd sort of day. A bit of cloud this morning and a shower, but it cleared for the afternoon, and it's likely to be that way again tomorrow. More on that in a moment. First, though, I want to show you this, and this is fairly special. These are opalised bones. Now, they're fossilised bones, and they've been opalised. It's a plesiosaur discovered at Andimuka. They're called the Adaman plesiosaur, discovered by John and Molly Adaman. They're on show at the South Australian Museum at the moment, and what the museum's going to do over the next 6 months is to clean these bones, and they'll be on display. You can see them cleaning them, and then the bones will come out. As you can see, they are opalised, and they're a very rare find, so pop down to the museum and have a look at what they're doing there. Meanwhile, weather-wise, we've had a minimum of 15 I should say, 0.5 up to 22 degrees this afternoon, and at 6 o'clock the barometric pressure, and it's still fairly warm outside. Having a look at the cloud chart first of all, we've had a bit of shower activity around the southern coasts and ranges. That was this morning due to the onshore airstream. Now that has cleared, but will come back tomorrow morning. So there's still a few showers, but possibly only just drizzle. Up in the northeast of the state, some isolated shower activity there. That's basically tropical moisture coming through. That will continue tonight and into the day tomorrow. The rest of the state, we should see the sunshine again by the afternoon after the cloud breaks up during the morning. Having a look at the analysis, it's all fairly clear. The high down there giving us that south-southeast airstream. Now, mild conditions with that, we're expecting the south to southeast to come through again, but the development of the low pressure up there, we will see those isobars strengthen, and that will draw a lot of the air through, so we'll see some strong winds around the coasts tonight and during the day tomorrow, but generally it should be okay. Now, if you're thinking of heading off, you will find it's fine in Broome, Alice Springs, Brisbane and Perth. The rest have showers of rain, maximum range from 17 in Hobart up to 33 degrees in Darwin. Here in our state today, maximum range from 13 degrees at Parawa to 35 degrees at Maree. So having a look at the state forecast, isolated showers, thunderstorms in the northeast pastoral, bit of drizzle still on the southern coasts and ranges, and that south to southeast wind strong on coasts at times. Strong wind warning therefore for all South Australian coasts except Gulf waters. The UV will be very high. Out around the country centres, dropping down to 12 for Clare overnight, 22 degrees tomorrow. Maitland, I should say, not Melbourne. You're looking for a top of 22. Elsewhere in the state, Port Augusta, 25, a top of 27 in Renmark. Victor Harbour looks lovely at 20 degrees. And for the waters now, the south-southeast winds coming through 12 to 17 knots. They'll be increasing to 20 to 25 knots by the afternoon, but the sea's up to 1.5 metres. And for the metropolitan area, so early drizzle, as I say, fine later, 23 for Adelaide and Elizabeth. Mount Barker cool overnight, 13, 19 tomorrow. Noarlunga lovely at 20 degrees. And over the next few days, we do have some shower activity coming in on Monday. It will persist right through to Wednesday. The longer-term forecast at this stage, humid with showers. Here's George and KG.
That's a bit ordinary.
Yeah, terrible.
Thanks, Xavier. That's National 9 News for this Saturday. Thanks for joining us, and we'll leave you now with more images from the first Remembrance Day of the new millennium. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.